Great. Hope you can hear me. It's all good? Great. So first of all, good morning and welcome everyone for SQL Bits 2024. And I'm really happy because this is my first SQL Bits. So I applied for for presenting a topic back in 2020, and eventually I couldn't come here because of COVID. And then it took all these 4 years, but never gave up. And I'm here right now presenting at SQL Bits. I'm really happy about that and thrilled equally. And thanks everyone for attending the session. I know there was a big party last night, and still it's great to see a lot of people turned up for my session. And so we are going to talk about Azure OpenAI models and especially around the GPT-4. And so what does GPT-4 bring in and what you can really do, and where is OpenAI is going to go in the future. So I'm Anupama Natarajan. You can call me as Anu. So I'm from Wellington, New Zealand. So I work as a Chief Data Officer for GoZeal. So GoZeal is an American company, and but I do work for the company for a good cause because the company focuses, it's a data and analytics company focusing on women who had a break in their career, want to come back to the workforce. I think we are looking forward for employing those type of women to give them the opportunity to get back into workforce. So I have 20 plus years of experience working in the IT industry and a Microsoft MVP for data platform and AI and a certified trainer. I do consulting, part-time consulting, and so through GoZeal through various of our clients. And the main reason for doing the consulting, and I'm keeping in touch with that, is when you do presentations like this, or when you are actually doing trainings, it's always good to add some real world experience to that. And that's the reason I keep in touch with my consulting side too. So if you have any questions post this session, always feel free to reach out to me. Yes, I'm on the other side of the world, but still approachable via LinkedIn or through any social media channels. I'm on the X channel too. So if you need any clarification or any questions that after the session you got it, you didn't have an opportunity to talk to me, feel free to reach out to me on my LinkedIn. I'm happy to clarify anything around that. I do organize conferences in Wellington, New Zealand. So if you're visiting Wellington, New Zealand, we do run user groups there. Feel free to visit us and feel free to say hi to me, and happy to just invite you all to Wellington, New Zealand. Great. So what is the agenda for today's session? So we are going to talk about Azure OpenAI. So we are going to kickstart basically around the Azure AI ecosystem. So Azure Artificial Intelligence has been there for quite a number of years. It has gone through various variations in terms of the naming changes and so on. So I'll just reiterate what they are, and some things will be still the same, but I think they have got some new names. So I will just highlight them what they are. And then we'll talk about what is Azure OpenAI, how does it differ from the OpenAI, because we have OpenAI and we have this ChatGPT, and where does Azure OpenAI fit in, and why should I tell my clients that they have to use Azure OpenAI? Because a lot of the people coming to my presentation or my training, they come and ask me saying okay, they say they can do everything through ChatGPT, so why should I recommend them to use Azure OpenAI? So we'll talk about those type of questions in today's session, and also what are the different type of models that are available through the Azure OpenAI, and especially focusing around the GPT-4 models, what you can do with that, and what are some of the use cases that you can solve with the help of the GPT-4 models. And each of my presentation or training, it always ends with the responsible AI principles, because that's really important in the era of AI. So we are using AI to make some decisions, and we are just we have to take responsibility for the decisions that we are providing to our customers. So whether it's an organization using AI, or whether it's an organization using AI to make decisions for their customers, both in terms of responsibility and accountability has to be taken seriously. There are some URLs which you can take back if you want to go and read through a little bit more about what we are discussing today, so that are available in the references section. And I'll take questions towards the end, but if there is a compelling question where you need to know the answer then and there, feel free to raise your hand, and I'm happy to take the question during this session too. So with that note, let us get started with the Azure AI ecosystem. Of course, there will be some demos I will be doing with ChatGPT, especially the GPT-4 on Azure OpenAI to be more specific. And we will look at how do you get started, as well as how do you use the GPT-4 models. So this is the Azure AI ecosystem. So as you can see, the way how I start presenting this slide is like a lot of people think, and especially like the young people think like machine learning and AI is something new. It came only in the last 5 to 6 years, and so that's why it's a buzzword in the market. But which is not the case. Like we are talking about AI since 1950s. So machine learning has been there since in the 1990s. So I can talk about that because I have a career spanning across 20 plus years, right? So when I was like in my early, like I would say early 20s, when I was working in early 2000s, I have seen like a utilities company literally doing machine learning in order to predict things for like real-time trading purposes. But the only thing that was at that time I was noticing is they were writing their machine learning models. Anyone guess in which programming language that they were using at that time, back in the early 2000s? No, not that old. They were using Excel VBA. So they were writing their machine learning models in using Excel VBA code. And that is only one data scientist in that organization. And he was literally running a grunty server under his desk. So he was really like fuzzy about, he doesn't want to share that with IT because he knows like if he gives that server to IT, they will repurpose it for something else. So he just keeps it under his desk and he updates it and he maintains it. It is like no one should touch that. But the value that it was, that models that he was providing, so it's not accuracy or anything, but it's more around the prediction. So they were doing real-time trading where the organization has to buy or sell power. And based on a lot of climatic conditions, other criteria that they have to take into account. So the models he is producing is actually, like, it will give a 7 days ahead of time, like what would be the time when it is a good time to sell power or buy power from the market. And the organization pretty much valued the data scientist work. And I started to understand why at that time. Then I was focusing around if that whatever he is putting as an output is such critical to the organization, why not they are not doing it in a proper way? So when I explored that, that's when I figured out like they use it for a guidance purpose. They couldn't use it like to say, oh, this is a concrete answer for my problem. The reason is like during that time, infrastructure wasn't cheap. So we didn't have the cloud, right? So which means if they have to buy grunty servers, and if you think about high availability and things, it's going to be expensive for the organization. The second thing is storage wasn't cheap either. So whenever he has to create models, like he will be using the data, and that data needs to be versioned and archived so that if you have to recreate that model at any point in time, you should have the relevant data associated. But the data was moving because he wasn't able to version the data so that he wasn't able to recreate the model. And also from their business perspective, once I move on, I'm not worried about the past because now I'm more interested in the next 7 days focus. So these are the various reasons why, even though people have been doing machine learning, they have been doing in a small scale, not in terms of like what we are doing right now. But if you take the current landscape, and thanks to the cloud, it has revolutionized the way how we do things. And now we have access to infrastructure, so we can spin up servers, whatever capacity we require, we can spin up or spin down as and when we require. The storage is also like we can allocate. We have different, I won't say storage is cheap, but it depends on the type of storage that you provision on Azure or any other cloud providers. You have options and varieties right now to version things. And also you can version the code. I don't know how you version the VBA code at the time, but now we are writing proper machine learning using the Python on things, and we can version control the code also. So all these things, like in terms of the ability to reproduce the results at any point in time, that is what they gave the confidence for organizations to do machine learning in large scale these days. That's why if you take a lot of organizations, they are doing loan approvals and other things, where making critical decisions like that, they are relying on the machine learning output. And because if someone comes and question them, they will be able to reproduce that. These are the criteria the model used in order to make that decision. So the reason I tell that story is because like the Azure infrastructure and the other capabilities that you get from Azure from an AI perspective, this has increased like a lot, I would say, in the last 5 to 7 years, like what I have been seeing here. So we have the state-of-art infrastructure available for the different AI workloads, especially if you want to spin up virtual machines to run train your machine learning models. you have all the way starting from like general virtual machines, or you have like memory optimized ones or CPU optimized ones. So you can pick and choose which virtual machine you require and you can run them. Then the thing around the right at the top, we have the pre-built AI models, which is the cognitive services. So if you have heard about cognitive services, they have now renamed that to Azure AI services. If we talk about Azure AI services, now they have even put the Azure OpenAI service, because it is also a pre-built AI model. So we call it as a large language model. I'll talk about what it is shortly, but it is also a pre-built model. A pre-built model is a model that we are not training. It's been already trained and available for us to consume straight away. And that's what we categorize as pre-built AI models. So you have the Azure AI search, and which will allow us to aggregate all the data sources in one place, and we can search upon them. You have the Azure AI speech, which will help us to do speech to text conversion or text to speech, and also like you can do translation type of things. Azure AI vision, anything to do with images, videos, you will be able to do that with the AI vision. Content safety, we'll talk about that again in conjunction with OpenAI service, because I told you, like I'll tell you the difference, why Azure OpenAI and not OpenAI. And then document intelligence will help you to extract information out of PDF documents. So you can, like, this is a fundamental problem everyone has got. So I'm currently through GoZeal working with a lot of insurance companies where they get all their information in PDFs. So we are using document intelligence to extract that information from PDFs so that we can report on them. So we are doing it in a completely automated way, and also to give the confidence to the customers, like the data, the quality of the data is also not compromised in that process. So then you have AI language for creating your Q&A type of things, or a chatbot information, and translator, like now you can translate things from one language to n number of languages. So these are pre-built AI models where you don't need to retrain or anything, just go ahead and consume it. So to give you an example, so a lot of people think like if I have to embrace AI in my organization, they think they have to kickstart a project, go and look for, put a business case for that and so on. So a lot of the AI projects which I have been working on with my customers, these are all adding AI capabilities to existing applications. We're not building new, we are going and looking at existing applications, looking for opportunities where we can optimize the process in a better way using AI. So just to quickly give you an example before I jump on to OpenAI. So we had a call center, customer who had a call center. So this particular call center, they actually receive calls, and the agent speaks to the customer for on average up to 15 minutes. So after the call, like after the 15-minute call, the agent spent another 15 minutes to write the entire conversation, what was happened between them and the customer. This is because in future, if the customer calls in, there will be the notes available for the next agent to pick that up. So we implemented speech to text ability inside the application, where whatever the conversation, it automatically, the transcript will be added to the notes for the customer in the CRM system, which was pretty good, because now they had 50 agents. Each agent now they can take double the amount of calls, because now the 15 minutes where they were writing the transcript information, loading that in the notes, has been saved. Now we are going one step further to say like, okay, how can I use Gen AI capabilities for the same problem? So same business problem, we solved the first leg in terms of, okay, you don't need to write the transcript, we will automate it. But now we are going one step further, because even though we write the transcript, we are transcripting the entire information, the whole conversation. But now we are using Gen AI capabilities to get only the key bullet points out of that conversation that needs to be discussed, because I don't want the agent spending another 10 minutes reading through the entire transcript, rather than what was the crux of the conversation between the customer and the operator. Just highlight me in the bullet points, and that's what now goes as a summary inside the notes for the customer. So as you can understand here, like you don't need a new project, you can pick and choose an existing project. So another utilities customer, what we have done is they had problems in terms of extracting billing data. So we had old meters that we have in the customer's properties, where that has to be a person physically need to go there to get the meter reading. So sometimes like the person will not be there, the whole gate will be locked, or there will be dogs in the property, so they won't be able to get the meter reading. But we have used the Azure AI Vision service. With the help of that, now the customer can just send a photo of the meter image, and we extract the meter readings right out of that using computer vision and custom vision services, which is part of the Azure AI Vision. So these are all the implementations we have done for real-world customers, where we just use an existing application and enhance it rather than building from scratch. So you always have this opportunity that you can look for. So then you have the Azure Machine Learning. So we talked about pre-built AI models already trained by Microsoft, available for us to utilize. But what if there is a particular problem where we have to solve it and none of the pre-built AI models are helping with us? That's when you go and create your custom machine learning models with the help of Azure Machine Learning. So within Azure Machine Learning, you can do that, like if you're a data scientist well-versed in Python, use the notebooks, or you can use the Azure ML Designer or automated machine learning. These are graphical user interface tools that will allow you to just build machine learning models. So that's, as you can see, there is a whole ecosystem of tools available within Azure AI. But in particular, we are going to talk about Azure OpenAI service. So before we jump onto that, I want to quickly talk about what LLMs or large language models really mean. So we normally call as machine learning models anything that we create, whether it's a pre-built or whether it's a custom built, we call them as machine learning models. Large language models is basically same type of models that we train, like a pre-built AI models, but it has been trained in the large scale of data. So if you think about your ChatGPT or the Azure OpenAI models, these models are trained with large volumes of data, and these data will be like publicly available data, like your Wikipedia, like the GitHub public repositories. They are all used as a base to train these models, and these models can talk about any subject. So if you take your machine learning, right, when you're creating a custom machine learning, you'll be focusing on one problem that model will be solving. But if you think about large language models like your GPT-4 or the ChatGPT models, they solve many problems. So you can ask about anything and they will be able to answer it. And that's the fundamental difference between the normal customized machine learning models versus the large language models. And we are going to talk about the likes of GPT-3, GPT-4. They are all what we call it as foundational model. So they are the base model that was provided, and we can utilize those base models in our solutions. So just a quick thing around ML versus LLM. ML is your machine learning model versus the large language models. So with large language models, as I said, it has got a lot of domains that you can ask questions about, whereas machine learning model, it is targeted towards a particular business problem that you are solving. And there are some risks that comes with the large language models, like you have hallucination. So hallucination is basically the randomness in the responses that you get from the models. Sometimes the model may not give you ask a question, and I always tell the people who attend my training is, when you ask a question, the model will always attempt to give an answer, like human beings, because it should show that it knows the answer, but it may not be always right. So sometimes through prompts, you can tell the model to say it's okay to say no. If you don't know the answer, just tell I don't know. Because if you say that in your prompt, and the model will get that as a clue and it won't try to make up the answer. So hallucination is basically getting that type of randomness in your responses. Prompt injection. So you send a question, but some people can maliciously inject some other information before it gets to the large language model. How do we prevent that? And ethical concerns. So all the responsible AI principles that we talk about, like how do we prevent the biasing on things like that? How do we handle those type of scenarios? These are all the major concerns that you have got. Whatever you have in machine learning, you still have that in the large language models, but a little bit more in a larger scale. So we talked about what large language models are. Where does Azure OpenAI service really fit in? So if I want to talk about OpenAI service, let me just go back a little bit. OpenAI was a nonprofit organization, and they created what we call it as large language models. The reason is they thought around the AI hasn't been used, and like people didn't understand the power of AI. So they decided to train these large language models with the publicly available data. Microsoft, they looked at these large language models. They understood what is the potential of these large language models. So they entered a partnership with OpenAI. And what they have agreed is in terms of OpenAI can train, because OpenAI needs a large infrastructure to train their models, because they are training on large volumes of data. So now they are training their models on the Azure infrastructure, whereas now Azure can take up these models and they can host it on the Azure platform for their customers. So this is the agreement that they have got. So the models that you are using in the ChatGPT or the OpenAI, the underlying base models, and the models that we have got on the Azure OpenAI, they are almost the same models. Before Microsoft take these models and host it on the Azure platform, it goes through their security team. They check a lot of things, give the feedback to OpenAI before they host those models on OpenAI. So then why OpenAI? So Microsoft, when they host these models on Azure platform, they don't just give you access to the models. They add a few layers in terms of, we talked about some of the risks associated with the large language models around the security. So how do we make sure, like when people put prompts, they don't put malicious information in there? Or when you get responses from the large language model, we don't get some malicious information coming as response. And that's why if you notice a lot of enterprise customers, they don't want to open up ChatGPT for their staff, because what if accidentally they copy the information in there and there you go, or if they ask a question which is not appropriate in an enterprise context. So Microsoft have taken this on board, and what they have implemented is these safety measures. So they have introduced the AI content safety service, so which is available as part of GPT-4. So every prompt that you are sending it to the large language models in Azure OpenAI, it is going to be checked for whether it has got malicious information in there. If it is there, it is going to reject it back to the user. It's not even going to pass that request to the large language model. Same thing, if the response that is received from large language model, it has got malicious information in there, the user is not going to receive it. The user will get a content filtered message instead. So if you look at it, this is not something that you get in your normal Open AI large language models. You get that as part of the Azure OpenAI. An additional thing also Microsoft does is they take enterprise security seriously. So you will be able to implement things like integrated with Entra ID, your private endpoints to access your large language models. You can utilize all those other security capabilities that you have got with Azure OpenAI service. And also they do something called as abuse monitoring. We will be talking about what it is shortly. So that is also another capability that you get if you are using the Azure OpenAI services. So in a nutshell, if people ask you why I should be using Azure OpenAI service instead of my normal OpenAI service models, exactly for these enterprise features. So if you are an enterprise customer and if you are worried about whether opening up these large language models in your organization is going to open up a lot of risks, that's where you can, with Azure OpenAI service and its with content safety module built in, you don't need to worry about that. And you can implement a lot of security measures around the Azure OpenAI service. Okay, so quickly around what are the things that you can do. So the key capabilities, other key capabilities, what the large language models in OpenAI service does, it can be done even in the normal OpenAI service within not just the Azure OpenAI service. Functionally, they're both the same, but the additional capabilities I told, that's what you get as part of Azure OpenAI service. So content generation, code generation, whether you want to get summaries out of your data, whether you want to build chatbot or virtual agent, you can use this irrespective of whether you are using Azure OpenAI or the OpenAI, because the underlying models are the same. Okay, so I want to just quickly show you a demo. So if you are new to using Azure OpenAI service, it's as simple as like any other Azure services. You go ahead and create and you search for Azure OpenAI service. Sometimes my proxy kicks in, so I'll turn it off. Cool. So this is going to go ahead and allow you from the marketplace to look for the OpenAI service. So I can quickly search for, and you get the service in here. So a couple of key points to note down. The OpenAI service currently is not available by default in your subscriptions. So if you go to the Azure portal and go to the marketplace to provision it, you have to actually request for that. There is a form that you need to fill online, and it will be provided as part of, if you don't have the support, it will tell you fill this form, and it takes up to 24 hours max to get access to it, to add to your subscription, because currently it is rolled out by demand.
Is it still in preview?
No, it's generally available, but they are rolling it out based on which customers they really want to use it. So it's still, I would say, they are targeting only a few customers. You can still put the request, and I think they are approving it more these days, but still it is not available by default in your subscription. So the next thing is not all the regions have got the Azure OpenAI service. So Azure is vast across the different regions, but not all the regions have got OpenAI service, and they are only some of the regions have got it. So the list is when you try to create a new OpenAI service, you can see that in the dropdown. It's not a big deal, but I think it is good to let the customers know. So these are the regions currently where OpenAI is supported. The third thing is not all the models are available in all the regions. So you may choose a region like a Sweden Central, but there may be only certain models that will be available. So we'll talk about what these models are, like a GPT-4 model, DAL-E model, then you may have embedding model, then you may have like Whisper model. So if you look at these type of models, not every single model will be available in all the regions. So if you are planning to use any particular large language model, some of the things that you have to consider is it available in the data center where I want to provision? And is it available, that particular model is available in the region where I'm going to provision? So keep that in mind, because sometimes you don't want to discover that at the later in the piece, because then you have to go back and recreate the OpenAI service and so on. Great. So here you can just go ahead and provide the region where you want to create it, UK South or something, give a name, and then probably a pricing tier, and that's it. The OpenAI service will be created. So I have got one already pre-created. So if you look at here, I have got one in Sweden Central. So the SC stands for Sweden Central. So I have got once you provision it, this is what you get to see, the Azure OpenAI service. And then you can launch what we call it as the Azure OpenAI Studio. So this is where you'll do everything. So for instance, this is the interface. So you can see I have got set of deployments available in here. I have got some playground where I can play with these models and so on. So within, so how you have your ChatGPT, which is a playground for your OpenAI models. So this is actually the playground for playing with my Azure OpenAI models. I'll come back to this after I just walk you through what the different type of models are. So we have the GPT-4 model, which is the latest model that if you are building any applications from scratch, you should be starting with the GPT-4 models. So originally when the large language models came, they kept text-based models and code-based models as separate. So if you want to write code, if you want to ask the large language model to write a code for you, when I say code, this is like a Python code or a PowerShell code, you'll be using the Codex model. If you wanted to write some content, saying write me a newsletter or write me a job description, then we used to use a text-based model. But now what they have done is they have merged all these models into one, which is a GPT-4 model. So now GPT-4 model, you can use the same model to ask it to create content, summarize content, as well as you can ask it to write code. So you don't need to deploy two different models and to interact with. With a single model itself, you'll be able to do that. And they introduced that particular capability with the GPT 3.5 itself. So 3.5 and 4, they can work with both text as well as code. The one difference between 3.5 and 4 is as they go higher with the new versions, basically you can, they reduce the hallucinations, which is the randomness it gives in the responses. And also it improves the performance, more data, the training will be more better than what you see. The other GPT-3 based models you are seeing, these are legacy models like the Devoncy and the Babbage, like these are going to be decommissioned sometime in July this year. So these are like a 3.5 and 4 are the advanced models over the GPT-3. Because some people were the early pioneers and they have been using those old text-based models. Microsoft are asking them to migrate so that they can decommission the old models. So just to keep the model list condensed. Then we have the embeddings, which is again a set of models. And a lot of people talk about vector databases these days. So if you talk to any database vendor currently, they say we support vector databases. Why all of a sudden everyone talks about vector databases? Because the large language models love the vector databases. So if you have the data stored in vectors, which is basically rather than text, instead it will be stored in numerics, then if you are trying to compare two large documents together, you can pretty quickly do that, because with numbers, you can easily find out whether two documents are identical or not. And that's why a lot of people now starting to store their information in vectorized databases. And embeddings will allow you to convert text into vectors. So if you want to just convert the text into vector before you can use it, you can use the embeddings model for that. DALL-E, I think everyone knows about it. It is a model which will allow you to generate images on the fly. You give natural language text and it will generate the image on the fly. So let me quickly jump on that and show the DALL-E capability, because it's pretty straightforward. So I want to just say, like, I want to get a watercolor image of Auckland. I'm from Wellington, so from New Zealand, so I'll just talk about Auckland Sky Tower, but you can put anything with people. I'm just typing some random text and say, like, okay, generate an image so that I get a watercolor of my Auckland Sky Tower. And I also want to make sure, like, some people are looking at it. So this is now going to, this model will generate the image on the fly. This is not going and searching in your Bing or in your Google. Instead, like, it is generating this image on the fly along with the description I have given. So think about scenarios like I write blogs and I want to generate images as part of my blog. Now I can use this LinkedIn post that you're putting. So if you want to just get a personalized image, you can use DALL-E 3 for that. If you're writing a storybook, and if you want to get images for your storybook, like, because it will be a fictional story, you want to just put something in the natural language text here, and you will be able to generate images on the fly, and you can download and utilize it. So that's what the purpose of DALL-E is. Whisper is another model where it can actually transcribe and translate speech to text. You can upload an audio file, and it will give you the transcription of that straight away with this model. And the last thing is fine-tuning your models. So all these things like the GPT-4, the GPT 3.5, embeddings, DALL-E, Whisper, they are all pre-built AI models. They're all pre-trained, you can use it. But sometimes you may get into the scenario with large language models also, where the model is not providing you the response that you're looking for. In that case, you can also fine-tune your model. So fine-tuning is basically customizing the model based on the data that you have got. So for instance, I have a database with full of like legal data. So any questions my users are asking, it should be serving it from my data rather than the publicly available data. I can do that. I can do that in multiple techniques, not just fine-tuning, but keep fine-tuning in the way 99% you don't need to fine-tune the base models, but there is 1% in any particular use case. If it is not providing you the results, then that's when you will be training that with your own data. I'll talk about That's right. So when you're fine-tuning it, you are not customizing the base model. So if I have a GPT-4 model, right, I will take an instance of that model in my subscription, and then I will fine-tune that instance with my data. So which means my organization data is still used in the model, which is not used by the publicly available base models. So your data is protected. So in that way. So I'll show you how you do that using the interface too. You can use it, I would say it's a multi-stage thing I will be doing. So when I say multi-stage thing, like for what I will do is like, okay, I can convert, if I want to store the data inside a Cosmos DB or something, I will just take the textual data, pass it on to embeddings, convert them into vectors and persist it. So it's mainly for that, not through the prompt, not for the prompts. So you don't convert the prompts through embeddings in here, rather than it is for persisting the data, textual data into vectors. You will be using the model for that in the architecture. Does that make sense? So keep that in mind. Embeddings is one of the things in the whole of the architecture solution that you're building. Sometimes you may need to convert the textual data and persist it into a data store so that the other, like the GPT-4 models, can use it. So we use embeddings to convert the text into vectors. Data, when you ask for the prompt, when you ask the prompt question, it will be using the vectorized output to give you the response. After that, yeah, I'll just clarify that a bit more when we get into some examples. Yeah. Okay, so these are the models that we have got in the model family that you can utilize it. So here, for instance, like these, you can use them independently. It's not that like, oh, I have to use one model which is going to solve all my problems. Sometimes that's what I said. In your architecture, you'll be using embeddings as well as you will be using the GPT-4. Embeddings is like you can take an existing data, convert that and persist it into vectors, and then you can use your GPT-4 to respond to the prompt questions that you are receiving. So you can, basically you will use multiple models in the same architecture of the solution. Okay, so because we looked through all these models, the first step normally what you do is as soon as you provision anything is to create a deployment. So when I provision the Azure OpenAI service, I'll go here and create a new deployment. So when you create a new deployment, you can see the list of models that particular region supports. So these are the models currently they are supported in Sweden Central. So I have got the GPT-3.5 Turbo, GPT-4, the versions like GPT-4, GPT-4 32K is basically the number of tokens that you can. So if you take any OpenAI models, I send a question, I get a response, right? So how do Microsoft charge me for that? So it's based on the token-based structure. So how many tokens like is going as part of your prompt? How many tokens that are coming back as part of the response? That's what is used for calculating the consumption for your model. And that is why some people now getting into the limitation saying they may have 100 pages of document and they're asking it to summarize it. They are running out of the token limit. So they are more for solving those type of use cases. Microsoft have got two things now. You have your pay as you go, which is tokenized model, or you can go for something called as provisioned throughput units or PTUs. So this is similar to if you have worked in Azure, you know, like you have a yearly commitment that you can have, right? So you can reserve your capacity for a year. Similarly with PTUs, it's a monthly commitment. So you work with Microsoft, discuss with your use case, and you'll tell what your performance needs are. And then Microsoft will refer you to a particular data center where you can deploy your OpenAI service and they can meet your SLA. So for this, you are committing a monthly amount with Microsoft in terms of PTUs. So they support both the models. So if you want to go with a token-based model, which is pay as you go, you can still continue with. But if you have a use case where you have to go for a fixed, you need to have a performance that it needs to meet, then you will go for PTUs. So you choose any particular model like a GPT-4 and you give a deployment name. So this is what I told, like you take a copy of the base model, you create your own deployment, and that's what you will be using in your solution. So I have created a GPT-4 deployment here, which is based on my base model GPT-4. So this is the model I will be using in all my solutions. So now I can go to my chat interface. So this is the interface where I can play with my models. So I can go and ask the question here. So if you want to know where I have given the deployment, so here it is using my GPT-4 model deployments. I can just go and say, okay, give me some accommodation options in London. So now this model is going to go ahead and provide me the responses saying, these are some of the accommodation options that you have got in London. So straight away, I didn't do anything, and this is the pre-built AI model. I just created an instance of that model in my particular thing. So I can even ask it to say, write a job description for a business intelligence developer. So it is going to go ahead and write a job description for me. And as you can see, I can write my prompts in a better way, saying like, okay, for this company, and these are the benefits we would like to give. So if I expand the prompts, then probably the response is going to be tailored based on the prompt. When I say the word prompt, the question I'm giving, right, write a job description or give me the accommodation options. That's what the question I'm asking the large language model is, what I call it as a prompt. And the response which I'm getting from the large language model, like a job description or the hotel accommodation options, that's what we call it as completion. So prompt, you ask a question, completion is the response that you get from the model. So this is something simple. I didn't do anything, just created a deployment of the base model. The next step is you can do something called as RAG architecture, which is retrieval augment generation. Think about I'm working for a travel company, right? So in my travel company, I already send a lot of customers to different places. So a lot of my customers would have visited London. They would have stayed in a lot of hotels. And what I would have got is some reviews about the hotels, which is the best hotel, like out of the ones which I gave them. So I don't want my customers to go through the list of hotels here when I plug this in my website. I want that to search in my own database rather than giving the responses from the publicly available data. And which is now a use case for a lot of enterprise customers because they have a lot of their data which they want to augment with a large language model rather than using the publicly available data. To give another example, right? So you are in an enterprise and you are searching, you've given an enterprise chat for your customers, your employees. The employee is searching and saying, I'm going to buy new glasses. Does the company provide me a benefit for the glasses? So if I use the publicly available data for that, it is not going to say that because the labor law doesn't give you all the details. But as an organization, they may give you some employees some privileges. They say like, oh, okay, if you work for us, we will give you an additional holiday, like a week of holiday, or we can do a reimbursement if you wear glasses and if you buy new glasses. So those type of things, now what you can do is, if you have your policies available, you can augment that policies with a large language model, which means it can provide the data, like the responses from your data rather than the publicly available data. But that process is not fine-tuning, just to make that clear. So fine-tuning is a totally different process. Fine-tuning is you customize the base model to create a new more customized model and you use it. There's a RAG feature which I was talking about. It's pretty simple. So if you go in here, you have an option says add your data. I can go here and add a data source. So this can be either Azure AI Search, blob storage, wherever your organization data is available. In this case, if I say I want to upload some files and I'll use some blob storage in here, because your data is your data, right? So whatever files that you're uploading, it will be sitting inside your subscription only. And I have to provision a blob storage where my documents will be uploaded. And also like I will provide a search service, which is my cognitive search service, where the documents will be indexed and ready for the large language models to query. So I just provide an index name saying maybe test index. So I'm going to browse for some files. So here I have got my SQL bits folder. I got some travel brochures. I'll quickly upload them. Well, before I take some questions, because this can take a little bit of time to upload. So what it is doing is I'm uploading around, for my travel agency, I have got some travel brochures and each one has got some hotels which I refer to. So I just index them as part of this. So I'll use the keyword search for now. Cool. So everything is done in that interface. So I took travel brochure documents from my company, loaded them in here. Now the ingestion process has started. So what I'm doing is previously when I asked for accommodation options, it was searching the publicly available data to give me the accommodation options. But post this process, when I ask for accommodation options, it is going to give accommodation options from my travel brochures. So it's not going to go and give any random ones for me. So this is the example how you can augment your own data. So here, if you look at it, I didn't do any customized fine-tuning of my model or anything. So this is a simple way how you can augment your organization data. So pretty much if I want you to take one thing out of this particular session before you go out is by default, 99% of the use cases can be resolved by doing proper prompt engineering. If you write good prompts, you will get the response from the model. Second thing is, if the prompts is not giving the right response, but you have a lot of data in your organization which can give better response, use the RAG feature, which is what I'm showing, where you are augmenting your database in here. The last 1% is, I tried all these features like prompt engineering as well as RAG, still it is not giving the response what I'm looking for. That's when you will go for fine tuning. So 99%, you don't need to do fine tuning at all with the large language models. Cool, so now the test index has been created. So if you notice here, right at the bottom of the chat interface, it automatically said new chat session has started. That's because now I have got new data augmented in my interface. So it has initiated a new chat session. So now if I ask, give me some accommodation options, sorry, I don't have the London one, so I will go for a New York one because I have, or a Dubai, because I have a browser for that. So this is now going to go and look at my browsers, and it is going to give me the responses. How do I know? First of all, it says like Maggie Travel Offers. So that's my travel company name, and it has got the browsers. And also it gives me the reference, the PDF which I used in terms of what was providing the response. So as you can see here, now the response is not coming from the publicly available data. Instead, it is coming from the PDF documents that I uploaded and gave it to the large language model. It's as simple as it in terms of how you can augment the large language models with your own organization data.
Question. When we add your data, can you add like your organization's internal wiki or conference page?
Yes. So if you look at it, one of the option in here, I'll just remove the data source. If you click on add data source, these are the different data sources. Some people already have got cognitive search where they have amalgamated all their organization data in there. You can use that, which means if I have different operational data stores, I can pull all the data into cognitive search or Azure AI search and then use it in the large language model. Or if I have flat files like what I had, you can do that. Or if you have a website. So for instance, all the question I'm asking, it should come from, I had this use case. So I had in one of the training, I had IT staff, and these people, they write the infrastructure as code for the developers, so to provision resources on Azure. So what they were asking me is, any code I'm asking, it should come from learn.microsoft.com. So now what I can do is, if I just choose the URL as learn.microsoft.com, any questions that you ask and index that, so basically all the content in learn.microsoft.com will be indexed, which means any question that I ask, it is going to come from learn.microsoft.com. So that's another use case where you can either it can point to a website or a URL address, and it will index that content. So watch this space because there will be more data sources that will be added in the future, but currently these are the ones that are available. So these are the different use cases that we say you can ask it to write content. We saw the job description. I can ask it to write code. So if I close this and if I go back in here and say write a Python code to create a new user in Azure Active Directory. So I'll be able to get the response in here. So prompt engineering is nothing but if you are saying, I can say write a code, it will choose the language of its choice. But if I say write a Python code, that's what prompt engineering means. So exactly convey what you want to the model will give you that response. So that's why a lot of people say like you need to spend a lot of time in writing good prompts, is because what you want as an output, only you know about it. Somehow you have to convey that to the large language model so that it can provide you a response. So here it has written a Python code for me on how to create a new user with Azure Active Directory. There you go. I can now take it and use it in my, customize it and use it in whatever I want. The reason I highlighted is you can do code generation, content generation, summarization of documents, image and video tagging. So there is a GPT-4 with Turbo Vision model, which is a new model that is available. So I said GPT-4 models can work with text and code. The GPT-4 Turbo with Vision, now it can work with images also. So in the chat interface, you can upload an image and say, describe about this image, and it will describe it. So for that, you need to use the new model, which is GPT-4 Turbo with Vision. So with Vision, it will include images also in your chat interface. So a couple of things. I told you about content filters, like now all the prompts and the responses that you are getting from large language models, they will be filtered. You can customize this content filter. So every time when you create a new deployment, you have an option where you can set the content filters can be applied in these different categories. You can set them whether it's low, medium, or high. So depending on that, it is going to allow you. So for instance, you don't want people talking about sex as in part of any questions in the part of prompts or in completions, you can set it to high. So which means it will be blocked. But similarly, you can alter this under different categories for each of the model deployment that you are doing. And also there is abuse monitoring. So if you are sending bad prompts, Microsoft is monitoring behind the scenes. And you can prevent Microsoft monitoring also because you have to fill a form to do that. But otherwise, they will be monitoring. They will send notifications to your subscriptions to say there is a lot of malicious prompts coming through, so that you can take action of that in your organization. So these are some of the references you can use to get started with Azure OpenAI, and also all the concepts that I have been talking about. I'll be sharing the slides, so you'll be able to get access to those links. And your feedback is important to us. So here is the URL. You can provide the feedback. And I'm also open to take any questions. Sorry, it was like 50 minutes. I was like an express train. So if I have covered something where if you're going back and thinking it's a lot of concepts, I need something to delve in deep about that. If you don't find that in the references, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to help you with a few more information around that. But watch the space. There is a lot going on the AI, Azure OpenAI. So lots to things change also. Lots to take it in, and lots of things are changing. So keep an eye on what's coming up in Azure OpenAI, and that's a way you can keep up to date.